What's up, guys? It's everyone's favorite Campy here, and right now I want to talk to you guys about effective range. Effective range can be defined by the shooter giving the application that they are trying to fill. Effective for a competition shooter might just be that you can consistently hit a target at a given distance, which is the definition that I'm going to be using for this. For a hunting definition of effective range, it might have a certain velocity and energy at a given distance, but that's not what we're talking about right now. We're talking about competition shooting. So, everybody wants to talk about how a 5.56 is a 1,000-yard gun or whatever, and I see it all over the internet all the time, whatever. Here's how I determine if I'm going to use, or what chambering I'm going to use for a certain competition. I go on Practice Score, and when it says that the farthest target is going to be 1,000 yards away, I figure out which rifle chambering reaches the transonic zone, Mach 1.2, or about 1,300 feet per second at sea level in 60-degree weather. I figure out which one is going to make it to the farthest target before it reaches the transonic zone. It's that simple for me. I know there's a lot of other math. I know certain projectiles travel through the transonic zone more efficiently and all of this other stuff, but I'm just telling you the way that I do it. Now, using that definition, if you take your standard 5.56 with 77 grain AAC ammunition, and in my gun it went 2,700 feet per second, that gives you, it reaches the transonic zone at 690 yards. Have I shot it farther than that consistently? Absolutely. The 77 grain Sierra Match King travels through the transonic zone very well. Now we're going to talk about the ace up everyone's sleeve. Every time that people talk about these 1,000-yard 5.56 guns and stuff like that, everyone wants to talk about one ammunition company, and that is Black Arc Ammunition. I have tested Black Arc Ammunition personally, and this is the number that I got with their ammunition. With their 77 grain, which is their 262 clone-ish load, I got 2,900 feet per second out of my 20-inch barrel guns, out of two 20-inch barrel guns, which would reach the transonic zone using those numbers with a 77 grain Sierra Match King at 770 yards. Can you shoot it farther than that? Absolutely. I just talked about that with a much slower round 5 seconds ago. Now, their new round, which is, in my opinion, going to be substantially better. I don't know if it's currently available or if it's about to be made available. They are going to be offering their ammo with an 80.5 grain Berger full bore, which gives you substantially more BC than the 77 grain Sierra Match King. And that bullet travels through the transonic zone well. Going 2,800 feet per second, that's a projection out of a 20-inch barrel. That would reach the transonic zone at 860 yards, which is awesome. But that's not 1,000 yards. Can you shoot at 1,000 yards? Absolutely. I'm going to go over that here in just a minute. But here's another impressive thing that a lot of people don't consider. If you have an extreme spread of 40 with that ammunition, so standard deviation around 20, that means that if you're in the middle of that extreme spread as your average velocity, and you go 20 feet per second high or 20 feet per second low of that number, at 800 yards, you're only going to have 7 inches of vertical dispersion at 800 yards with that particular round at 800 yards, whatever. Okay. Since I'm already talking about 5.56, with a 20-inch 5.56 using 77 grain Hornady hand loads, this was ammunition I made myself. I was getting a velocity of 2,850 feet per second. That gives you a transonic zone at 800 yards. And I shot that at a mile. I had a first round miss, a second round hit, and a third round hit. A lot of times people will leave out the detail of how big the target was at that distance. because it's not nearly as impressive if somebody is shooting a fucking car at 1,000 yards as if they're shooting a 10-inch plate or something. The target that I was shooting at 1 mile was a 24-inch by 24-inch square. So first round miss, second round hit, third round hit. And that was with 75 grain Hornady hand loads out of a 20-inch 5.56 that should reach the transonic zone at about 800 yards. Okay, now that we've got those numbers out of the way, the 5.56 numbers, let's talk about 6mm arc. So a 20-inch 6mm arc with a 95 grain Sierra Match King going 2,700 feet per second reaches the transonic zone at 890 yards. Still not a 1,000-yard gun for me. A 6.5 Grendel with 100 grain ELD VTs going 2,700 feet per second is an 830-yard gun. Still not a 1,000-yard gun. Now, I'm going to tell you guys why I've been saying that in my expert opinion, the 22 ARC is the best small frame precision gas gun cartridge available currently. Because with the 75 grain ELDM out of my 22 arcs, I have multiple 22 arcs that can achieve over 3,000 feet per second. So I took a few of those numbers, some of the high, some of the low, and I got an average of 330 feet per second is what I get with that load. That means that my transonic zone, I reach Mach 1.2 at 1,040 yards. That, to me, is a 1,000-yard gun, and that is why this whole past year I've been shooting 22 ARC. Now, this was not to sell 22 ARC, because the less people that shoot 22 ARC in competition, the less people that I'm actually competing with. I just wanted to give you guys some numbers for you to chew on so that you can understand that, yes, these guns are absolutely capable of shooting well outside of their transonic zone or whatever, but this is how I determine what gun would be effective for a certain competition.